It's time for Ask Mike Mondays. Mike answers one listener's question every week. Here's Michael Becker and Paul Peebles.
Welcome to Ask Mike Mondays. I'm your host, Paul Peebles, National Underwriter for Old Capital, and joining me today, smartest guy in the room, Mr. Michael Becker. Michael, how are you?
Paul, things are going pretty good. Just back in the Texas heat from being out for a few days, and it's hot.
Now, you were out for a couple of days because you were up talking with investors that have put money into your transactions up north.
Saw beautiful Minneapolis, of all places.
Is that something that you would recommend for people that are putting money in, significant money into people's deals, to touch and squeeze their hands and making sure that it's a real person that they're investing in?
Yeah, that's kind of reminded me that this is a business that is hardest. We're doing it this way now, but it's still hard to do it from your house behind your computer. There's nothing really like getting out and pressing the flesh a little bit, or fist bumping, I guess, at this point, or elbow bumping, or whatever the new handshake is, and kind of look someone in the eye and talk to them. And we have some older gentlemen that invested some material amount of money into a handful of deals. So we just kind of went to go meet with them and their partners. And so, it's just good. It's hard to do business behind your computer. So it kind of reminded me of that. So it's a new world we're in, and everything's evolving. So it's not saying you can't be effective, but if you're really trying to establish a deep relationship and you're talking about getting 7 figures plus into a deal, and nothing really substitutes that one-on-one interaction, Paul.
So maybe people don't know about your background. Maybe people are just joining us. So why did you start investing in apartments?
Well, I was a banker loaning money to other people on multifamily deals. Kind of realized it was on the wrong side of all those deals. Kind of better to be the borrower than the lender. And really one of the biggest catalysts for me was one year, one April, I was filing my tax returns, and I still worked at the bank, and I couldn't even itemize. I had no tax deductions, right? I just had to take the standard deduction, and I started getting mad at my CPA, and he told me there's nothing you can do for me. If you wanted to save on my taxes, you need to start a business or buy some real estate. So I kind of was maybe one of the last straws that kind of pushed me over that way. I was already kind of thinking about it. That was kind of one of the last straws, was to save on taxes.
So you started to buy real estate, and you started off in the single family side. How many single family homes did you buy?
About a 2.5, 3 year period, bought 16 of them. So bought it like a foreclosure, renovated it, leased it out, and then would landlord it. And that just wasn't very scalable. And then just transitioned over into the multifamily space 7, 8 years ago, I guess now, and done about 10,000 units, own about 6,000 units a day. So it's been a heck of a good run.
That's pretty damn good. So, and you were in banking for a long period of time, and you've been in real estate for some semi-long period of time, 7, 8 years to be doing this, and then to also
about 10 with the single family stuff. Yeah, so it's been a while.
Yeah, you've done very good for the period of time. So that's the reason why we talk with Michael and kind of ask him the questions, because he's just not a talking head. He has actually been doing this for a long period of time. As you heard, he worked for one of the largest national banks across the United States, and then transitioned from being a real estate lender to being a real estate owner. And so he is an owner-operator of a large portfolio of multifamily properties for SPI. They're really based here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And so we kind of pick his brain and kind of figure out a little bit about what's going on. If you think that we bring value to you at any time, please go back into iTunes and go into the Old Capital Podcast, oldcapitalpodcast.com. And there you can kind of download a 17-page white paper report that Michael, I, and James Heng wrote. It kind of gives you the checklist of what you should be doing if you're thinking about trying to buy a multifamily property. Again, I'm Paul Peebles. I mean, I've closed 5,800 apartment loans over the last 35 years. And so I've kind of put some stuff in writing of what you should be looking for, how you should be structuring these deals. And then one of the things that Michael wrote that I think is really good is just the due diligence report that Michael uses. And Michael, tell us a little bit more about that due diligence report.
Yeah, we put a sample due diligence checklist, actual checklist that we use when we're trying to buy a deal. So it's kind of like the Christmas wish list is what I call it. So it's every document that we attempt to get. You don't always get everything that you want, but it's a pretty comprehensive list, and that's a good place to start. If you're learning, it's a good thing to kind of maybe swap out my letterhead and plagiarize that list.
That's great. And so again, if you think that we bring value to our conversation, please leave us a 5-star comments on iTunes or Stitcher, anything that how you ever get to us, we would certainly appreciate that. I mean, we're downloaded about 62,000 times a month, so we do appreciate everybody that listens to the Old Capital podcast. So here's the question. Michael, I keep hearing about the tax benefits on buying apartments. Can you explain to my husband and I one more time? And so what is bonus depreciation and when is that going to expire? And if it expires, this keeps going, this question, will it have a negative impact on folks investing in apartments? And, do folks invest in apartments only for the depreciation benefits? And when those start to begin to go away, are you concerned?
So there's a lot in there. One of the main benefits of investing in real estate is you get the benefit of depreciation. So if you buy a commercial building, the property is depreciated over a 39-year schedule. If you buy a residential building, which multifamily falls under, it's depreciated over 27.5-year schedule. So about 3.5%, give or take, of the improvement value of your property is written off every year. So it's kind of a non-cash expense. So it's one of the greatest tax benefits there is out there because you get to write off something you don't have to write a check for as an expense. Back in 2017, when they passed the Jobs Act, before that, the IRS always allowed you, and the entire time we've been doing it, allowed you to do what is called a cost segregation study. So basically, if you think of a multifamily building, there's different components to it where your roof wears out at a different rate than what your parking lot or your landscaping or your carpet or your appliances. So if you do a cost segregation study, the IRS allow you to take the building's components, and this report will break it down into the various categories that have a 5, 7, 15, and 27.5-year life. So what that allowed you to do is kind of take some future depreciation, bring it forward by, instead of depreciating the whole thing over 27.5 years, part of it would go over a 5-year schedule or a 7-year schedule or 15-year schedule. In 2017, when they passed the Jobs Act, they kind of took what already was good tax benefits and kind of put them on steroids when they allowed, anything that had a useful life of 20 years or less to be immediately expensed or bonus depreciated in the year it was put in service. So meaning that, anything with a 5, 7, or 15-year category, you could write off in the year you buy it. So what that roughly meant was you're writing off somewhere around 30%, give or take, in my experience, of the purchase price in the year you put it in service. So kind of depending on where the property is located and the value of the land, that's been kind of my experience in Texas. So, if you're buying a property with a 70% loan, you're writing off, at the end of the day, somewhere 75 to 100% of the equity you invest into the deal will be written off in the year you put in service. So that's great. And then so you can use those losses off any other passive income, or if you can't use it that year, you suspend those losses and carry it forward for future years, or ultimately, if you sell the deal, it'll offset depreciation recapture and a capital gain at the back end. So it's been great benefits. So I think that certainly has helped. So that's kind of what bonus depreciation is. I believe it starts to phase out. So it's 100% bonus depreciation, Paul, if I recall correctly. And again, I'm not a CPA, so talk to your CPA. But my understanding is that it starts phasing out at the end of 2022. So it's 2023, I think, goes to 80%, and then 60% the next year, and kind of is fully phased out by 2027. So it certainly is set to decline. Obviously, if there's a new administration that looks like, at the recording of this podcast, looks kind of likely at this point, I would suspect that in 2022 there'll be new Congress and new administration seems likely. So it sounds like they're probably going to come for some of these tax benefits. So this might be the last hurrah in 2020, Paul, to get the bonus depreciation. So hopefully we can get another handful of deals in and take advantage of it while it's still here and available.
Well, do you think that if this is going to be going away at some period of time, so people probably should start thinking about investing sooner than later, but like everything, is it a concern that a lot of people invested into multifamily properties just because of the depreciation that's been offered, and if that goes away, is that going to take some of the air out of the balloon?
I don't think it's the sole reason, Paul, that people invest. Certainly kind of the cherry on top of the sundae is the way I look at it. I think you get the ability to buy a real asset. You get to be leveraged with, good debt done right. You get cash flow paid, monthly or quarterly. So you get current cash, and then you get, the ability to, have the asset go up and over time. and get some appreciation. So it's, in a pretty stable, safe, durable. It's a durable source of income. So I think it's been years and years being fine. I mean, people bought a lot of real estate and, all throughout the millennia, right? But I mean, certainly people were buying real estate in 16 and 17 when these benefits weren't in place. So I don't think it's going to have a material impact. I mean, I think if, rates go through the roof or, there's some other sort of onerous governmental restrictions, that could maybe lessen or increase the desirability of it. But at the end of the day, I mean, you go over to Europe, Paul, you see these buildings that are built in the 1200s that are still in use, and someone's paying rent to somebody for the better part of 8 centuries.
Yeah,
I mean,
amazing.
I think that it's proven to be pretty resilient through years and regime changes and world wars and whatever else. So I think it's always going to have a level of desirability.
You brought up an interesting point about interest rates, and if interest rates start to rise, I mean, what is your crystal ball saying these days where interest rates are right now and where they're going to go in the future?
I mean, it's hard to fight the Fed, because if it was ever shorted a stock in the last, say, 3 or 4 months, you learned that the hard way, right? The Federal Reserve is, printing money, buying bonds, and keeping the overnight rates low. So they're keeping the overnight rate, which, not that hardly anyone uses prime anymore, but prime rate or LIBOR rates basically follows what the federal funds overnight rate is. So when they cut it, those rates go down, and that's what your index is with the banks that you borrow from. If you're on an adjustable mortgage, where the fixed mortgages are typically trade off the 10-year treasuries, and the Federal Reserve has been printing money to buy 10-year or various maturities of the treasury rates, plus other people buying them as well. So it's been keeping the longer end of the curve low as well. And basically, I think that Chairman Powell of the Federal Reserve said he's not going to move the short-term rates, I think, at least through 2022. So, we're talking about 2.5 years still at minimum, where they're going to keep the short-term rates at zero. So, I think you listen to our favorite comedian / economist, Dr. Dossauer. He says, interest rates are going to go up unless the market fears inflation. And so far, there's been no inflation, but at least no consumer price inflation. There's certainly been asset price inflation, but you can't print. I'm curious to see, I guess, what the outcome is. They printed $3 to $4 trillion have been added to the national debt in the last 3 or 4 months. So I can't imagine at some point we don't bleed over to inflation. So I don't see it in the immediate horizon. So I think kind of the intermediate term, I think we expect to have, near zero interest rates on the short term, and kind of in that, sub 1% on the long end of the range for, the next several years.
Are you putting your money where your mouth is? Are you buying properties or refinancing properties on adjustable rates versus fixed rates?
That's right. Yeah, that's what it's been a big paradigm shift for me, Paul. That when we first started, we did a lot of 10 and 12-year fixed rate debts, and those have been the wrong thing to do, especially with the the yield maintenance or defeasance prepayment penalties that you had to incur when you wanted to sell it, or the next buyer had to assume your mortgage. So we have, tens of millions of dollars of lessons learned along the last several years. So we've been, we switched 18, 24 months ago, and just pretty much on a lot of floating rate Freddie Mac debt. So it's paying off in a big way right now, where we had, spreads have kind of gone up. So, your index is one part of your rate, and your spread over the index is the other part. So the spreads that we're getting now are kind of in the mid to high twos, where 18 months ago, 12 months ago, you can get a spread in the mid to high ones. So we have, I think, 3 loans, Paul, that have a 1 starting on the interest rate, which is unbelievable to have sub 2% interest rate. And then we have many that have a 2 starting on the interest rate as well. And those deals are just printing cash. I mean, if you think about it, if you're paying 2% interest only versus something that might be in the high 4s amortizing, I mean, you're paying probably 3 times the amount of debt service on the amortizing loan that I put on in 2016 versus the interest-only loan I put on 2018 or 2019. Really paid off. And the way to hedge it is you buy an interest rate cap, which is pretty affordable nowadays, because the market is anticipating the rates to be low for the foreseeable future. So they're basically just a transaction cost almost. There's very little cost to the actual hedge. So that's what we've been doing, is you borrow, you float it, you have some flexibility on the exit, you buy a cap. And luckily, real estate's generally pretty slow and dumb. So if you start getting really worried about the race running, you can quickly pivot, put a get a interest rate lock pretty quick and pivot to 10-year, 7-year, 10, 12-year fixed rate mortgages if you want to own it, and you can always take that out within a month or two. So that's been what we've chosen, and it's been actually working really, really well.
That sounds like a plan. So it gives you some increased flexibility if you believe interest rates are going to remain low. And I agree with you, Michael. I don't see anything on the horizon that's going to kick us up to having the Feds increase overnights or interest rates on the 10-year Treasury even going higher. So, everyone's expecting inflation in some period of time, but there may be real estate inflation, but we don't see anything around the world that's going to have yields going higher. I mean, I was looking at the German bond, the Bund. I mean, for 10 years, that's a negative 0.44%. So I don't know if
So the U.S. Treasury is what, 65 bips a year, about 110 bips higher in America than you are in Germany for. So I don't see how the U.S. yields can run if they're competing against that. The JGB is probably negative 20 basis points at the same time.
Amazing. If people wanted to know a little bit about what you do at SPI, maybe possibly co-invest with you guys in the future, tell us a little bit about what SPI does.
Yeah, the best way to find out more information about us, simply go to our company's website, which is www.spiadvisory.com. That's SPI like spy advisory.com. There's a contact us form. You fill that out, and we're always happy to send out some information about kind of what we do and potentially getting onto our list. And really what we're focused on, Paul, is just trying to find something that makes an apartment complex that makes some sense to put together and go out and raise capital and buy and operate the deal. So that's kind of what we're really focused on. Hopefully we get another deal across the goal line in 2020. It's trying to be, cautiously optimistic. So just trying to make sure we, are smart and prudent with whatever we decide to buy.
That's great. So again, smartest guy in the room, Mr. Michael Becker. I'm Paul Peebles. Have a great day.